Welcome back to The Orbit. You know, the podcast brought to you by Strategic Connection, where we dig into all the latest trends and insights to help your business thrive online. And today we are strapping in for a deep dive into something pretty crucial for, well, any business with a website. We're talking about web design trends for 2025.
Ooh, 2025 sounds futuristic.
It does, doesn't it? But it's closer than you think, and the way things are moving, you got to be ready. We've got a fantastic article to guide us today. It's called Future of Web Design: Trends That Will Dominate in 2025. Catchy title.
Absolutely. Grabs your attention.
Yeah. And we'll also be pulling insights from a companion piece by, well, a Strategic Connection called Decoding 2025 Web Design Trends. You know, kind of our take on all of this.
Always good to have multiple perspectives.
For sure. Now, these sources both start with this story of Michael, a business owner, who had a website that was, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly doing him any favors.
Oh, no. What was going on?
His site was, how to put this nicely, outdated, difficult to use. And it was actually, costing him clients.
Ouch. Yeah, I can see how that would be a problem.
A big problem, for sure. But here's the thing. Michael turned things around. He embraced these new trends we're going to talk about. And it's a great example of what can happen when you get it right. So, with that in mind, let's launch into these trends.
Let's do it.
The first one that really jumps out, and this is something we hear more and more about, is accessibility by design. Now, I know to someone who isn't a web designer, that might sound a bit technical, right? So maybe you can break it down for us in plain English. What exactly does that mean?
Accessibility by design, at its core, is all about making sure that your website can be used by everyone. And I mean everyone, regardless of any disabilities they may have.
Okay, so that's thinking about people who, say, use screen readers because they have a visual impairment, or folks who navigate websites using only a keyboard because of mobility issues.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that people experience the web in different ways and making sure your site is inclusive and welcoming to all.
Gotcha. So it's about a lot more than just making a site look pretty then. It's got to be functional for everyone.
Exactly.
The article we mentioned earlier, it quotes Samantha Fagan, a WordPress developer, who says, and I'm quoting here, "Accessibility and inclusivity in web design are not optional. Too many designers and developers overlook them, but they directly impact user experience, search rankings, and whether people can actually use a website."
Samantha's absolutely right. I mean, think about it. When your site is accessible, it tends to rank higher in search results because search engines like Google consider accessibility a key factor in website quality.
Oh, so it's good for SEO too.
Absolutely. Plus, an accessible website simply provides better experience for all users, and that leads to higher engagement and hopefully more conversions.
Makes sense. It's like if you build a ramp next to a set of stairs, it doesn't just help those who can't use the stairs, it benefits everyone, right?
Exactly.
So, speaking of building, our next trend is all about how technology is changing how we actually create websites. And here we're talking about this rise of, what are they called? No-code and low-code platforms.
Yeah, those are getting a lot of buzz right now.
They are. So what are they exactly? And what do they mean for someone who maybe wants to create their own website, but doesn't have a tech background?
Okay, so imagine this. You're building a website, but instead of writing lines of code, you're using drag and drop tools, almost like putting together a puzzle. That's the basic idea behind these platforms.
That sounds pretty user-friendly.
Right. They really empower anyone to create a website without needing to learn how to code.
I bet that's a game changer for a lot of small businesses or individuals who might have been intimidated by the tech side of things in the past.
Oh, absolutely. It's opening doors for so many people.
But are there any downsides? Like, do we need to be careful about anything with these platforms?
Well, every tool has its limitations, right? We need to be mindful of those.
True.
One potential pitfall is that these platforms can sometimes make it too easy to focus on the visuals and maybe overlook things like website performance and, well, accessibility, which we just talked about.
Yeah, that makes sense. We don't want to get so caught up in making things look pretty that we forget about the core functionality and inclusivity.
Exactly. A stunning website is worthless if it takes forever to load or if people can't even use it properly.
Well, it's all about finding that balance, right? Using these new technologies, but not sacrificing the core principles of good web design.
You got it. Performance, accessibility, these things can't be afterthought.
Right. And all of this leads us perfectly into our next trend, which is, drum roll please, the UX renaissance.
Ah, yes, UX, user experience. It's not just about the tech stuff. It's about really understanding your audience and their needs.
So tell me more about this UX renaissance. What does it mean to approach web design with, well, with empathy?
It means putting yourself in the shoes of your visitor. Why are they on your site? What are they trying to do? What might be frustrating them? And then designing the site in a way that anticipates those needs and delivers a smooth, enjoyable experience.
Makes sense. Attention spans are so short these days, you got to grab people quickly and make it easy for them to find what they're looking for.
Exactly. Otherwise, they'll just click away to a competitor.
And no one wants that. The article we mentioned earlier has this great quote from Carrie Mulvey, a UX designer, and it really gets to the heart of this. They say, "We currently live in an era where the internet has brought the world closer together, and the sheer number of users reflects a myriad of needs that iterative UX design strives to meet. This calls forth designers to approach design with such diligence and empathetic problem solving, resulting in a more tailored approach that reshapes how we consider design."
I love that quote. Carrie's highlighting how crucial it is to think about the huge diversity of users and their needs. And this idea of iterative UX design, it's so key.
So what is that iterative UX design? Break it down for us.
Basically, it means you're never really done with your website. You're constantly testing and tweaking things, seeing how people are using it, and making adjustments based on that data.
It's not like you just set it and forget it. It's ongoing.
Exactly. Websites are dynamic. They should be constantly evolving.
Gotcha. But what does this look like in practice? How do you actually implement this whole UX renaissance on your website?
Well, that's a great question, and this is where Michael's story becomes really interesting.
Right. Back to Michael. His old website was driving clients away. But by embracing these trends, especially this focus on user experience, he totally turned things around.
Yep, his website went from liability to asset.
The sources mentioned that his bounce rate, the percentage of people who leave a website after only viewing one page, it went way down. Plus, his client inquiries, they shot way up.
Huge improvements.
Clearly something was working, but what did he actually do? Was it like a massive overall redesign or something?
That's what's so interesting. It wasn't some magical overnight transformation. It was about incorporating specific features that directly addressed the needs of his users.
Okay, like what? Give us some examples.
Well, for starters, he added customizable text sizes. So simple, but so important. People could adjust the font to what was comfortable for their eyes.
Yes, thoughtful.
Right. He also added a dark mode option, which a lot of people prefer, especially in low light conditions. And crucially, he made his navigation menus adaptive. That means they worked flawlessly across all devices, whether you were on a desktop, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
Those are all really practical things. So it's not about flashy gimmicks or anything. It's about those details that make a difference in how people actually experience the site.
Precisely. And I think that's a really important point here. We tend to think of web design as being all about the aesthetics, how things look.
Right, making it pretty.
Exactly. But it's so much more than that. It's about how the site feels to use.
Okay, it's about function over form. Or maybe function and form.
I'd say it's about creating an experience that's accessible, it's functional, and above all, it's user-friendly. Putting the human at the heart of the digital experience.
I like that, putting the human at the heart of it all. It's easy to forget that sometimes when you get caught up in the tech stuff.
It is, and that's exactly why this shift towards user-centric design is so important.
So let's recap for a second just to make sure I'm following along. We've talked about 3 big web design trends so far: accessibility by design, the rise of no-code and low-code platforms, and this whole idea of a UX renaissance. And I guess the overarching theme here is that we're moving away from thinking about websites as these static, purely visual things and towards a more dynamic, user-centric approach.
You nailed it. It's about recognizing that websites aren't just brochures anymore, they're interactive experiences, and we need to design them with that in mind.
And the cool thing is, this user-centric approach isn't just limited to websites, right? It applies to any digital platform, mobile apps, social media profiles, even online games.
That's right. The principles are universal. You want to create seamless, enjoyable, inclusive experiences for your audience no matter where they're interacting with your brand.
So it's about meeting people where they are and giving them a positive experience, however they find you. And I mean, with tech evolving so rapidly, it's exciting to think about all the new ways we'll be able to enhance that experience, right? AI, VR, AR.
It really does feel like we're on the cusp of something huge. Imagine websites that can anticipate your needs before you even type anything, or interacting with brands in immersive virtual worlds.
It's like we're stepping into a science fiction novel. But with all these crazy advancements coming our way, one thing remains clear. The digital experiences that are going to win, the ones that are going to be truly successful, they're going to be the ones that put the human at the center.
I couldn't agree more.
It's easy to get caught up in the bells and whistles, but at the end of the day, it's all about connecting with people, creating something that makes their lives a little bit better, even in a small way.
And using all this amazing technology to help us do that even more effectively.
That's a great way to put it. So, as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive into the future of web design, what's the one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to remember?
That's a tough one. But I'd say the most important thing is to shift your mindset. Don't just design websites, craft experiences. Think about how you can make your online presence more accessible, more user-friendly, more reflective of your brand values. And remember, it's not a one-time thing. You gotta keep learning and adapting to stay ahead of the curve.
Solid advice.
Yeah.
And for our listeners who want to dig a little deeper into all this, maybe start planning their own website revamp, we've got some great resources for you. We've got links to those articles, plus some great resources from Strategic Connection down in the show notes. Be sure to check them out.
They've got a ton of info, whether you're a newbie or you're looking to, really up your website game.
So we've covered a lot of ground already, but where do we go from here? For someone listening who's thinking, okay, all this user-centric design stuff sounds great, but what are the actual steps? Where do I even begin?
Well, I always say the first step is to look at your own website, but not as the owner or creator. Try to see it through the eyes of a first-time visitor.
Put yourself in their shoes.
Exactly. Ask yourself, is it easy to find what I'm looking for? Does the navigation make sense? How fast does the site load? And importantly, would someone with, say, a disability be able to use it effectively?
It's like a self-audit. See how your site stacks up against all these trends we've been talking about.
That's a great way to put it. And once you've done that, you can start thinking about specific changes you can make to improve that user experience. Maybe it's adding those customizable text sizes we talked about, or a dark mode option, or maybe it's simplifying your navigation or optimizing your site for faster loading times.
And what about those no-code and low-code platforms? Could someone use those to make those kinds of updates?
Absolutely. Those can be really powerful tools, especially if you're not a tech whiz. They can give you the control to implement a lot of those user experience improvements yourself. Now, of course, if you need really custom stuff or you've got a super complex website, you might still want to bring in a pro, a web designer or developer.
So it's about finding the right approach for your needs and your budget. But regardless of how you do it, investing in user experience is, it's non-negotiable these days.
I totally agree. It's not a luxury anymore, it's a necessity. And the great thing is, like we saw with Michael, these investments can really pay off.
Yeah, speaking of results, we've talked a lot about the benefits of this user-centered approach. But for someone who might still be on the fence, what are some concrete examples of how this translates into actual business success?
Well, when your website is easy to use and provides a positive experience, people are more likely to actually stick around. They'll engage with your content, spend more time on the site, and ultimately take those actions you want them to take. Whether it's buying something, filling out a contact form, or signing up for your email list.
So it's not just about making people feel good. It can actually impact your bottom line.
Oh yeah, the data shows that websites with strong user experience see higher conversion rates, more customer loyalty, and even an improved perception of your brand.
So it really is a win-win. You create a better experience for your visitors, and your business reaps the rewards. And that's what I call a good return on investment.
I like the way you think. And I think this is especially crucial now because the online world is so competitive. You've got to stand out. You've got seconds to make a good first impression. If your site is clunky or slow, people are going to bounce.
It's like walking into a store that's a total mess. Bad lighting, stuff everywhere, can't find what you're looking for. You're probably just going to walk right back out.
Perfect analogy. Your website is your digital storefront. It's often the first interaction someone has with your brand. You wouldn't neglect your physical store, so why neglect your website?
Right. Okay, so let's do a quick recap of everything we've talked about today. We covered 3 big web design trends: accessibility by design, the rise of those no-code and low-code platforms, and this whole UX renaissance. And the common thread running through all of them is this shift away from websites as, just static brochures and towards this more dynamic user-centric approach.
Exactly. Websites are evolving into interactive experiences.
And this isn't just about websites, right? It's about every touch point someone has with your brand online. Mobile apps, social media profiles, you name it.
Absolutely. Whether it's a website, an app, or whatever's next on the horizon, that focus on the user experience is going to be key.
I mean, technology is constantly evolving. Think about AI, virtual reality, augmented reality, all that stuff is going to play a bigger role in how we experience the digital world.
It's mind-blowing to think about what's possible. But amidst all that, we can't forget about the human element.
The human element, that's what it all comes back to, doesn't it?
Yeah, using all this incredible technology, not just for the sake of it, but to create meaningful connections, to make people's lives a little bit easier, a little bit more enjoyable.
Well said. So as we start to wrap up our deep dive today, what's the one piece of advice you'd give to our listeners, the one thing they should really take to heart?
I think the most important thing is to really embrace this shift in mindset. We're not just designing websites anymore, we're crafting experiences. Think about accessibility, usability, and how your online presence reflects your brand values. And remember, this isn't a one-and-done thing. You've got to stay curious, keep learning, keep adapting. The digital world is always changing, so we've got to change with it.
That's great advice. And for our listeners who want to dive a little deeper into all of this, maybe even start planning their own website revamp, we've got some great resources for you. Be sure to check out the show notes for those links, plus some great stuff from Strategic Connection, our partners who, well, they live and breathe this stuff. They can help you create a digital experience that really makes an impact.
Whether you're just getting started or, looking to take things to the next level, they're a fantastic resource.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into web design's future, is there one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to walk away with? Something to really ponder.
I think the biggest shift is moving away from just designing websites. It's more about crafting experiences instead. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I'm getting it. So it's not just about the visuals. It's about how people feel when they interact with your site.
Exactly. Ask yourself, how can you make your site more welcoming, more user-friendly, and really show off what your brand is all about? And this isn't just a one-time thing, right? The internet's always changing, so you got to keep learning and adapting too.
Path is be learning. I like that. And it's not just websites, is it? This whole user-first approach, it's got to apply to apps, social media, anything digital where you're connecting with people.
Exactly. No matter how they find you, people are looking for that seamless, enjoyable, and inclusive experience.
It's all about making that connection wherever your audience is. And, with tech evolving so fast, who knows what cool new ways we'll have to make those connections even better, right? AI, VR, AR.
The possibilities are pretty wild when you think about it. But no matter how fancy tech gets, we can't lose sight of the human on the other side of the screen.
The human element. So important.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's about using all this incredible tech to create meaningful connections and make people's lives better, even just a little bit.
Well, that's been a great deep dive into the future of web design. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's been my pleasure.
And folks, remember, the future's not set in stone. It's what we make it. So let's design that future with empathy, inclusivity, and a focus on crafting meaningful experiences for everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Until next time.